Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. We're diving into the world of dividend growth stocks. Those investments that not only offer the potential for growth, but they also they reward you with a nice stream of income along the way.
Yeah.
It's like having your cake and eating it too, right?
It's true. And what I find really interesting about dividend growth stocks is their track record. We're talking about companies that have historically outperformed the market. I mean, they've left the S&P 500 in the dust.
Yeah.
And, a big chunk of that success really boils down to this idea of compounding.
Okay, so break that down for me. What's the magic behind compounding?
So imagine this, compounding, think of it like a snowball effect for your portfolio. So those dividends that you're getting, they get reinvested, right? And then they buy more shares, and then those new shares earn even more dividends.
Okay.
And then the cycle keeps rolling, leading to potentially exponential growth over the long term.
Yeah, it's like a financial chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of impressive growth, that's exactly what we're seeing with today's focus. We have two pharmaceutical giants.
Right.
Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly.
Yeah.
And they're not just, riding the healthcare wave. It seems like they are leading the charge.
They are.
With all these
Leading the charge.
Groundbreaking treatments in diabetes and obesity.
Yeah, and that leads to a really important question, right?
Okay.
How do you, as an investor, spot a dividend growth stock that's actually worth your time and your money?
Yeah. How do you sift through all of that?
Well, there are two key metrics that you really want to keep in mind.
Okay.
The first one is the payout ratio, and
Okay.
think of it this way: if a company makes, let's say, $100, and then they pay out $80 in dividends, that leaves them with less wiggle room to, invest in new products or even handle a crisis.
Right.
So ideally what you really want is a company with a payout ratio below 75%. And this is a good sign that they can keep those dividends coming while also investing in their future.
So it sounds like a lower payout ratio equals a more financially secure company, which I think, makes everybody sleep a little bit better at night.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned there were two key metrics. What's that second one?
Yes. That's the dividend growth rate.
Okay.
And this basically tells us how much a company has been increasing those dividend payments over time.
Okay.
And so a healthy, consistent growth rate, ideally one that's outpacing inflation, is a really strong signal of a company's profitability and also their commitment to sharing those profits with their shareholders.
And that consistent growth is key for those long-term investors.
Exactly.
Who are really looking to build wealth over time.
Yeah.
Now, with those metrics in mind,
yeah,
let's dive into our first contender here, and that's Novo Nordisk. This company has been like a dominant force in this diabetes care market for decades.
Novo Nordisk, I mean, they essentially own the diabetes market. Sure. They control something like 34% of the global market.
Wow.
Which is valued at over $50 billion.
Wow.
And roughly half of the insulin market.
Jeez.
Which is worth over $15 billion.
Those are some serious numbers.
You're seeing that market dominance play out in their stock price as well. I mean, it's exploded by 137% in just the last 3 years.
Wow. So compared to, the S&P during that same time?
So the S&P during that same time frame only grew by about 31.8%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's clear that investors are really recognizing the strength of Novo Nordisk. But let's get down to the heart of the matter here.
Okay.
Their dividend growth story.
Yeah. I mean, what a story it is.
Yeah.
They've achieved this incredible 29% average annual dividend growth rate, and that's over the past 5 years.
29%. That's incredible.
Remarkable.
And they're able to do all of this while at the same time keeping a very, very manageable payout ratio of 47%, right?
Precisely, yeah, meaning that they've got plenty of room to keep those dividends growing without really breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
And plus, their current dividend yield is sitting at a pretty attractive 1.23%.
Right.
Especially for a company that has such strong growth prospects.
And a lot of that growth potential, I'm assuming, is driven by their work with GLP-1 therapies.
Absolutely.
Ozempic and Wegovy. I mean, those are huge.
Those are the big ones. Yeah, they've been. These GLP-1 therapies. It's a new class of diabetes and weight loss drugs.
Right.
And it's really been a game changer for Novo Nordisk.
Yeah.
These two drugs alone are expected to be major contributors to their projected 19.5% revenue growth in 2025.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're really firing on all cylinders.
They are.
With a strong,
Yeah.
strong presence. and a very bright future.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I know that no investment is without risks.
Right.
So what should investors be kind of mindful of when it comes to Novo Nordisk?
That's a really important point to consider.
Well, yeah.
While they do have, a lot of things going for them, I think investors should be mindful of their valuation.
Okay.
So their stock is currently trading at 24.7 times its projected 2026 earnings.
Okay.
So this is what we call a premium valuation.
Okay.
So basically that means that, compared to their peers and compared to the S&P 500,
Right.
they're priced a little bit higher.
Okay.
And it reflects, the market's confidence in the company.
Right.
But it also means that their stock price could be more volatile, especially during a downturn.
Okay. So it's kind of, what goes up must come down a little bit.
Exactly.
But even with that potential volatility, I mean, it still seems like Novo Nordisk is a really, really solid contender.
Oh, for sure.
For anyone looking to add some dividend growth to their portfolio. All right. Well, let's shift gears over to another pharmaceutical innovator who's making some serious waves.
Okay.
And that's Eli Lilly.
Yeah, Eli Lilly.
Their stock has surged you ready for this?
Yeah.
292%.
It's incredible.
In the past 3 years.
Yeah.
That eclipses,
It's remarkable.
even Novo Nordisk.
It is.
So clearly investors are seeing something pretty special here.
They are, yeah.
What's the inside scoop?
Well, what's really fascinating about Eli Lilly is that they're not just, resting on their previous success.
Okay.
They have a really robust pipeline of promising drugs in development. And they've also recently launched some real blockbusters.
Okay.
Take Mounjaro, for example.
Okay, yeah.
That's their treatment for type 2 diabetes, and that's been generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
And then they have Zepbound, which is their entry into the world of obesity treatment.
Right.
Another potential game changer.
Right. So it sounds like they're right up there with Novo Nordisk when it comes to,
Oh, absolutely.
innovation in this GLP-1 market.
They are.
But, what about their dividend growth? That's what we're really here for, right?
You're absolutely right. We can't forget about the dividends.
Right, exactly.
And, I'd say in terms of dividend growth, Novo Nordisk might have a slight edge there.
Oh,
But Eli Lilly's strategy is really more about balancing growth and those shareholder returns.
okay.
So their dividend has grown at a respectable, average annual rate of 15.3% over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And they have a payout ratio of 59.8%.
Okay. So that payout ratio is a tad higher than Novo Nordisk.
It is, yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
still within a reasonable,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
reasonable range.
Yeah, yeah.
And with a projected revenue growth of 26% in 2025,
Right,
it seems like they're in a good position to kind of
for sure.
keep those dividends flowing and growing.
Exactly. And while their current dividend yield of 0.57% might seem, a little bit, maybe a tad modest compared to some of the other dividend stocks out there.
Right.
You got to remember that Eli Lilly is really prioritizing growth right now.
Okay.
So as their earnings continue to climb, I wouldn't be surprised if we see them kind of, reward their shareholders with even more substantial dividends as we move forward.
Right. So we've got these two really strong contenders,
Yeah,
both poised for continued growth
for sure.
and both committed to,
Absolutely.
delivering that value to investors.
Yeah.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
Besides their products
Yeah.
and their stock performance,
Right.
are there any other key differences that investors should kind of keep in mind
That's a great question.
when comparing like a Novo Nordisk
Yeah.
to an Eli Lilly?
Yeah, one key difference I think is really their areas of focus. Novo Nordisk, like we talked about, has a more specialized focus, right? It's diabetes and it's obesity treatments, and that's really allowed them to dominate that diabetes care market.
Right.
Eli Lilly, on the other hand, has a much broader kind of therapeutic portfolio.
Okay.
They've got oncology, immunology, neuroscience,
Wow.
in addition to diabetes and obesity.
Okay.
So, this diversification means that they're not as reliant on any one single market.
Right.
Which can be a good thing, especially during, times of economic uncertainty.
So it's kind of that
Yeah.
trade-off between
It is.
specialized dominance versus diversified stability.
Exactly.
Are there any other key differences that investors should be kind of aware of?
Yeah, I think their valuations tell a pretty interesting story.
Okay.
We talked about how Novo Nordisk is trading at a premium
Right.
compared to its peers.
Right.
Well, Eli Lilly's valuation is even higher. Yeah, it's at a price-to-earnings ratio of 28.9
Wow.
based on their projected 2026 earnings.
Okay, so that's even higher than Novo Nordisk, and that's saying something.
It is.
Because we were just talking about how high that was.
Right, exactly. And, what that tells you is that the market is really, really optimistic about Eli Lilly's long-term growth potential.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially placing a bet that Eli Lilly is going to bring some more, blockbuster drugs to market
Right.
and continue this impressive earnings growth.
But let's not forget that both of these companies are operating in a market that is changing rapidly.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this demand for diabetes and obesity treatments is only expected to increase in the coming years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you see that impacting these companies as we move forward?
It's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And, it's, you got me thinking now.
Yeah.
This rapidly evolving market, increasing demand.
Yeah.
It seems like that's both a challenge and a massive opportunity for these companies.
It is, yeah. I mean, the World Health Organization estimates almost 500 million people
Wow.
worldwide are living with diabetes.
Jeez.
And then on top of that, obesity rates are also climbing globally.
Right.
So you combine those two things, that creates just this massive market for companies like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly.
It's a sobering thought when you think about it.
It is.
But it also really highlights this incredible potential for growth in this sector.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, both of these companies, they're really at the front lines of this global health challenge.
They are.
And they're investing heavily in research and development to make sure they're staying ahead of the curve.
Right.
They're exploring all these new drug candidates, refining existing therapies, and they're constantly trying to find these innovative ways
Right.
to improve patient outcomes. I mean,
Right.
that commitment to innovation is going to be really key for their continued success.
Yeah. It's like this race almost
It is.
to develop that next breakthrough treatment.
Absolutely.
And I think for investors, what that really translates to is that potential for long-term growth and consistent dividend payouts.
Yeah.
So as we kind of, wrap up our deep dive here into these pharmaceutical giants, what's the key takeaway?
I think that the main thing for listeners to remember is that both Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, they offer really, really compelling arguments for those dividend growth investors.
Right.
They operate in a market that's only getting bigger. They've got these strong track records of innovation, and they are absolutely committed to delivering that value to their shareholders.
Yeah, they're not just treating patients. It seems like they're treating their investors pretty well too.
That's right.
And that's always a good sign.
Absolutely.
But of course, as with any investment, you got to do your own research.
Please do.
Consider your risk tolerance. Make sure these companies actually align with your own personal investment goals.
Could not agree more.
But, for those folks out there
Yeah.
who are looking for that exposure to this healthcare sector, and they really want that long-term dividend growth.
Yeah.
Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are definitely worth at least, taking a closer look at.
I think so.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
For this deep dive into the world of pharmaceuticals and dividend growth.
Yeah.
And remember, everyone, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing.